Hello theme park enthusiasts, and welcome back to Planet Coaster. In the first episode here of Appleford Amusement Parks, we went ahead and built this ride, the Monster, which is a wooden coaster that's going to sort of be a focal point for the park. In this episode, you're going to see me do the interior of the building for the Monster, including the queue line area that I'm working on here, and also redo the area where the shops and such are going to be on the other side of the building. So, one thing you will notice right away here is I am using pieces from the TMTK and the workshop. I'm really not against this idea. I really think that some people have created some wonderful things in the game, and there's no point in me attempting to recreate these things, especially because of the fact that I will not recreate them nearly as good as they have already. So you're going to see throughout the park that I will use things that I find on the workshop that I feel fit, because more what I'm wanting with this park is to tell the story of Appleford Amusement Park and to really create it to be what I want it to be. And if that means using other people's different accessories and stuff, I'm perfectly fine with that. Here you're going to see that I'm looking at some theming that I did on some other buildings that will come in future videos. It gives you a little sneak peek of what's going on in the park besides this building. And throughout, as I said, these first few videos, you are going to notice that. I was working on multiple rides at the same time. As I would get bored with working on this coaster, I would get tired of doing lighting and things like that for the ride itself. And so I would go and work on something else for a bit just to break up the monotony of it and to enjoy the game that much more. So for right here, as I said, we're working on this queue line. I had an idea for what I wanted. I wanted something here that would get the that would feel very real about it. I was thinking about what is it that you have in many queue lines, and especially for a ride like this, it's a wooden coaster, so it is going to be accessible to people of all different ages and such. It's not like it's that extreme of a ride, say with inversions and things of that nature. So with that kind of thing in mind, I wanted to put in some access for everyone. One thing that was going to be important is those lockers that are there, because of the fact that you do have to have a place to store your stuff while you're on the ride. And because of the way that the floor lies here, yes, there is sort of a path, but you can get off that path without it looking unnatural. So I felt that it worked alright to have these lockers where they are, and from there I sort of wanted to build out the building. Definitely lighting was going to play a role here, as I wanted this to be a very bright building so that people could see around where they were going. While I was doing this side, I was thinking the whole time of what I wanted to do on the opposite side, because I really wasn't satisfied with the way it looked. Here, I'm just sort of walling off an area of the ride that I'm just not using. It's not really an important area. It's just added space for the building and just sort of in the way. And so I wanted to make sure that I got it blocked off properly so that the building got more overall structure to it and looked better for the guests on the ride. And this, I think, does happen in a lot of parks, that there's just extra space sometimes. They may use it for storage or things of that nature. I don't need it in the game. And in this park, and probably the next few parks that I plan on building, I'm not going to worry about backstage stuff as much as some creators do on Planet Coaster. I know it is a popular thing. I've seen many videos of people where they would do the sort of back of house type of stuff with closets, anything that is needed by the actual staff. I'm not going for that with this park, as this park is, as I said, much more about the guests and the focus on the guests and telling the story of how the ride is supposed to function overall. So with that in mind, there are a couple things I've done in this park. I haven't put on sort of the needs of my staff. I'm not worried about having break rooms and stuff like that, because really I want the park just to function properly. I don't want to have a focus on, oh, the shop has been closed for a while because the staff member wandered off too far. I really want it to be much more on the guest experience, because as I said, the true story is what's going on with Joseph Appleford and the guests in a way. So, as I said, for here, just getting sort of these areas that I'm not going to be needing, that aren't going to be used in the game or in my park, walled off here, just to make it more visually appealing for the guests. Going over here, you will see that I have put in a gondola ride, and I wanted sort of some visual inspiration from that. Wanted to see how these lights that I create over there might look, and did like the way they are. Changed them up slightly to function more for this facility, and went ahead and sort of did a combination of those as well as the hanging lights. Looking back on it, I still don't see this as really the level of detail that I'm wanting to get into the game, and I think it's one of the reasons that these videos are the way they are now, is because I did return to these areas multiple times to improve on them as my skill got better and as I added to the level of detail that I was doing in things. So I do build on what I was doing overall. Here I wanted to put in a stroller area, take up some of this empty space because I just felt like it was a big empty area, and I was trying to think of what I wanted to do here. I wanted to have sort of a stroller containing facility here, so I got some of the chains and pipes or posts that I found on the workshop, downloaded them, and go ahead and make this little area just to contain the strollers and such here. As you can see, now I'm actually starting to use where I actually highlight multiple pieces and am able to copy them over together. I realize I also want to add something else there, so I'm going to go ahead and do that momentarily. But I want to go ahead and get this chain and the post ready on the other side here, so that way I can sort of group copy the entire thing. Had to put 2 posts in one there in order to make it work properly. So I get those in place, and that way I can go ahead and just duplicate the other chain fencing area to make this into a storage area for multiple different things. So I get that moved over. Repeat the process again here, well, after I put in a final post, so that way it sort of contains the area. Move that over, so now I have these 3 sections, or these 2 sections sort of divided up here. And that way I can go ahead and add in additional storage. This one's for strollers. I also wanted to go ahead and put in electric chair area, as well as a wheelchair area. So I figure with the exit the way it is and such, at least at this point in time, it was easy enough for a wheelchair person to be able to be wheeled up there, and then the wheelchair to be brought down here. That'll change shortly, as you'll see in this video, as I play around with the interior more and more, but I feel like I got it to a point where it still functions properly. So here we put this as the stroller area, just to place your strollers when you're on the ride. Wanted something to hold the sign because I do want this to be very realistic. Yes, it's going to be fictional. It's based on a work of fiction by myself, and I do want it to have some horror elements that are very much not real, but at the same time, I want the actual structure to overall function. So here we have the wheelchair storage. Didn't feel there would be that many of them, so I just go ahead and put in a few there. And I felt like that sort of fleshed out that area some. Felt like this area was lacking a bit, so I went ahead and threw in some more lockers. It's probably an absurd amount of lockers for the ride, but you know what? It's okay. Like I said, it's more about making the area seem full and used versus it having to be absolutely realistic. So I need to light this area up some if I was going to put anything into it. Decided, you know what? A light there would be the perfect sort of split between the wheelchair and the stroller area. Then I'm going to put in another little area over here in order to go ahead and put the electric scooters in. Felt the light there worked alright, so we went ahead and brought that over. We'll put the electric scooter sign in. Just changing up the colors to fit with that gold and purple theme that we've got going on for the park. For some reason, the color on that sign was being odd, not exactly sure why. Couldn't get it to work any better than that. Here, I just wanted to find an electric scooter out of the ones that I had downloaded, and you'll see that in some of my videos that I download or I subscribe to multiple different things on a workshop. I really do recommend checking out the workshop. And then I sort of find the one that I feel fits my park most appropriately. Here, I found a sign that sort of worked as far as it was a wait time sign originally. I personally didn't like the wait time portion of it, so I get rid of that and I modify the sign to be what I want. And this is something I'm really doing a lot in this series, I'm finding, is that I'm taking pieces off of the workshop and then modifying them to be what I want them to be. So I do make it a wait time sign, but I felt like it doesn't have to be electronic, and it wouldn't be for this park. Just simply, from this point here, this is about how long you'll be waiting. So, is it accurate? Probably not even close, but it's a rough ballpark. And then I go ahead and put in the portion here so it tells you, hey, if you're a fast pass holder, you're going to go on that side, and if you're just a standard ride person, then you're going to go to this side. I like the way the sign looks overall, so I go ahead and make it into my own personal blueprint, so that way I can repeat it throughout the park. And you'll see here, I'm going to take a little bit of time now just to go ahead and put it on some of these other rides that I have. For this particular one, I am playing around with a light on it, so that way it fits the particular building. Just trying to figure out which light seems to work best for it and such. I think I settle on this one, and then I go ahead and place it in over here. As I said, I do have these other rides, which once again I will be covering in a video in the next couple weeks, but I did want to go ahead and put in signs for each of them as well, so you get a little bit of a sneak peek here of what's going to be coming up in the following videos. So I put in these signs. I realize in a little bit here that at night these signs aren't really easy to see because of it being night, so I will go ahead and add in a sort of small floodlight there at the bottom of them, just to sort of uplight them so that people can read them even in the dark. Again, I was having that sort of odd view bug that even though the colors were gold and purple on it, it wasn't showing up that way. It was showing just as these dark colors at points, like it is right there. Not sure why that is. I'm guessing something with the game, but it wasn't something I could really correct, so I just had to leave it. Here on this sign is perfect as the purple and gold, the way I had wanted it. Might be something just with the lighting and the way it works, but really don't know for sure. But yeah, I go back through and I put the lighting in. Later I went ahead and saved the blueprint again, so that way the actual blueprint has the light built right into it, so that way whenever I put them places I don't have to worry about that in the future. So with those signs in place, I return to this, go ahead and save to make sure that well, actually then I think I was done for that particular day, so I went ahead and saved. And then I decided here, you know what, I really hate this in the way it is. So I decided to rip all of it out. I wanted to remove everything, and I had an idea of how I wanted this to look. The idea I went with was based on my latest trip that I went to SeaWorld a couple months ago. And with that trip, I had noticed with their coasters, they would often have you exit the coaster into a gift shop. And I really liked that idea. So while this is not in any way ripping off any of their shops, it was sort of taking inspiration from their shop. So in this, you're going to see, I'm going to move the exit to be a part of the shop itself, getting rid of all this stuff here, just creating a nice empty flat space to use. And that way, so when the guests are getting off the roller coaster, they go through the shop instead of just back into that same room and having the shop be separate. So with that in mind, I went ahead onto the workshop. I found a bunch of different things that might be sold in this kind of a shop. And I also then felt like I was able to combine putting an ATM in, putting the first aid in, the bathroom that I wanted, as well as some other just shops there that I feel play into the area properly, but at the same time create more of a realism to it than what I had originally. So here I'm just putting a ramp down. This wall gave me fits here for some unknown reason, but I wanted a wall sort of between the entrance and this exit area. So again, it was sort of that the exit was a shop of its own, sort of separate from this area. I do realize though, when I'm building it, that I have the strollers and the wheelchairs and stuff on that side, and so when a person's exiting, they are going to need access over to that area. So you will see that I do leave sort of an opening through the wall in a location, so that way the guests can go back through and get their strollers and everything of that nature. As I said, I do want it to be very realistic in its capability and its usage. So with that, it took a little bit of fiddling here to get it exactly the way I want. As I said, the wall was just not wanting to work properly. It was not attaching as I had hoped. I moved these lights over hoping that would sort of eliminate some of the issue with the wall. I wanted the first piece there so when people are getting off the ride, they could see down into the queue line, as I think does occur on a lot of different rides. As you can see there, the whole thing that I was having was just the pieces of the wall were not lining up properly. They would not, for some reason, go exactly where I wanted them. Finally, I fought with it enough and was able to get them to line up. Right now, I build the wall all the way across. Then I realized here in a little bit, as I said, that I was going to need that area to be open as it is. So I go ahead and go back in later and modify that. Here I just wanted to change up the entrance slightly to make it more appropriate to the new design of the building, and so that's all I was doing there. Here we've got this, and then we'll go ahead and I went ahead and deleted the floor so that way I could see where my actual paths are running, and you're going to see me do this in several of the buildings I make. So this way I can put in the shops and stuff. It'll look like it's one continuous floor in the end, but I wanted to go ahead and be able to put in the shops where I want them, everything that I sort of wanted in the facility, and then we'll go ahead and put the floor back in. So that way I can see the areas where the people will not actually walk, but it doesn't look that way in the long run. I feel like it really does work as a nice little trick, and since I'm building these as not technically part of the building, all of this is functional, but it doesn't make the building look weird. And I do recommend that, not putting the actual shops and everything as part of the building. I thought that was a really handy trick that I figured out here. It just, as I said, it made it flow a lot better than it would have otherwise. For some reason I had been putting shops on top of the roof there. No idea why that sort of glitched out the way it did, but I realized it thankfully in time and was able to remove those. So I go ahead and put in just a memento here, as well as I believe a Hat's Fantastic. When people get off of your really big rides, that's when they're most likely to buy sort of gifts and stuff like that. So I wanted to put the gift shops there right off of this ride because I do feel like this coaster is my big signature ride of the park, and it's the one that's going to make the guests the happiest. So I went ahead and put those shops in there, sort of making this an exit area and not technically part of the store. You do exit into the store, but I did want that separate, and I really didn't want the first aid to be a part of the store, so that's why I sort of hid it behind that wall there. Here I'm just putting in some beams to finish out that wall so that it doesn't look too abnormal. The beams in the game I'm really starting to find are a great thing. They do allow me to hide sort of corners and stuff that would otherwise be really problematic in the game. And at the same time, they just sort of finish things off nicely. Here I was trying to sort of move the sign and whatnot, now that I've sort of changed the front of the building, so that way it looked more uniform. Playing around with this and everything of that, the different lighting and stuff on the outside there that I had done previously, just to try to get it to look right. Then I'm installing the floor again, so that way it looks like it's a continuous floor even though there are actually different areas of the floor. now, because of how I set up these different facilities and stuff, they are sort of each their own building, and I have to attach the pieces to them like they are their own buildings and such. And in some cases, I just have to put the walls in myself because otherwise they'll clip through things. So it does take a little bit of fiddling around and not technically making things into one particular building in order to get them to be just the way I wanted them. Again, putting the walls to really snap to the building properly just wasn't going to work here because it was going to clip through walls. So again, I had to sort of compromise or adjust them myself in order to make them fit where I wanted them. Same thing with the roof here. It was a lot of playing around with it, and part of the problem I do recognize is the fact that I did this after the fact. If I had gone ahead and had this in mind when I was building the building originally, I wouldn't have had this issue. But since I was sort of doing it after I had already constructed the building the way I did, it did take a bit more. As you'll see in a later ride that I do put in another coaster here in a couple of weeks' time. And with that particular coaster, I went ahead and sort of had the building in mind as I was building it. So I feel like the building comes across as much more one piece instead of a mismatch of things. But I don't really hate it for this particular building because, again, as I said in the previous video, this is one of the oldest rides in the park. So this building also is going to be one of the oldest in the park, and it really would have gone through a lot of changes over time. It would have sort of been adjusted and things would have been added and taken away from it as time has gone on. So the fact that these walls might not be exactly perfect doesn't really bother me too much because of the fact that they really are sort of additions to the building. They are something that was added on. It was an afterthought that just sort of comes as part of the park to function even if it wasn't originally intended. So just putting in a couple signs here, playing around with which ones I thought worked best. Had a nice big piece of wall there, so I wanted to put something in. Think about using that one, but I figured the other one sort of fits with the first aid, so let's go ahead and continue that pattern there. And then here, even though these are shops, I don't want them to look like shops. Basically what I'm going for here is I want them to sort of be the cashier areas for the actual store that's here. Even though people won't use any of the things I'm going to add into the store, I want it to at least appear like it could be the store. So one of the two is going to be the sort of photo area for a camera that doesn't exist on the ride, and the other one's going to be the cashier area for the ride. So that way you've got the ability to buy those ride photos, everything of that nature. Here, as I said, I realized you need access back into the initial area so you can get your stroller and your wheelchair. So I just put a hole through that wall, and I go ahead and continue those beams around there, as I said, to sort of mask off the issue that caused. Here, as I said, I'm just adding in things that I found on the workshop. A poster rack that was really beautiful that somebody had done, as well as some clothes racks and some shirts. I only have a couple different shirts. I obviously could get more, but I really love the detail quality of these shirts and the fact that I could change their colors. And because of that, I felt like they worked for what I was doing here because I could just change colors, change orientation, change what the shirt said and such in order to make them appear like they're different, even though I'm only using 3 or 4 of them. So same sort of thing here, just using some stuff from the workshop that other people have done. As I said, I really recommend if you're going to get into building your own park, use the items that are on the workshop. It's one of those things where I could have spent hours doing these things myself, but that's not sort of the point of my park. I'm not here to design t-shirts. I'm here to try to make a park that I felt fits what I'm wanting. Here I had found a board game that somebody had made onto the workshop. It was absolutely beautiful. And I felt like there's this open space here where people aren't going to walk. So I go ahead and check, and I move the table just to an area where it's not going to be walked through or clipped. And I put a set of board games for right now. I end up going ahead and changing that here in a little while. I wish I could fill in this area more, but the reality is I've got people walking through all these different areas. So with that in mind, I sort of had to put them where I did and leave a lot of empty room. I do put in a few items. Once again, people are not actually going to walk back into the area with the strollers and such. So with that in mind, I was able to go ahead and add a few more items into that area there, and I do so here momentarily. First, I wanted to set up the lighting, get it to be sort of uniform with what was on in the other area and such. And then sign, I felt, or the poster here was looking just a little bit empty. So I go ahead and use some of this design from the outside to put around the poster. All of this I did find a bit of a struggle simply because of the fact that I'm working inside a building, so there was many times where I would sort of clip out of the building and have to force my way back inside to get to work on it again. Here's another item I found on the workshop. This one was done by another YouTuber. His channel is Geekism. I love some of the stuff he does. I believe he's the one that created this. I definitely had seen him use it, and that was where I sort of picked up that I wanted to have it in my own park. Went ahead and changed it. Since he's from Europe, he was using the meters and the metric system. Changed it to be American here by putting in feet instead and inches, and sort of went with a standard I found on a lot of wooden roller coasters was a good 48 inches is the minimum height. And then again here, as I've done with other items I found on the workshop, I adjust this to be what I wanted. I didn't feel those other pieces were necessary for the way I wanted it, so I instead changed it here to just the basics that I wanted it to be and save it as my own blueprint so that way I can put it on rides throughout the park. Adjusting it a little bit more, resaving it, putting it in place. Here's when I realized that the color was slightly off of what I wanted, and I start making the adjustment throughout the park of changing the purple from that sort of maroonish purple into more of a rich purple that I get in the park. Change it to nighttime here so that way I can see how the lighting's working and if I need some more lighting or not. Play around with the idea of putting a light right there so you can more easily see the sign. And while it would be a good thing to be able to read the sign for the height regulation, I felt like it took away from the view of the building, and I had worked very hard to get that view the way I wanted it. So I decided, you know what, people would just have to pay a bit more attention in order to be able to see that height sign, and I left the light off of it. So here we are coming to the end of the video. If you've liked what I've done in this video overall, please do go ahead and click the like button. If you've not already, please subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, so that you're aware when I produce new videos in the future. As I said, I do add in just a tiny bit to the end here in order to, well, I keep fussing around with these beams here because I just didn't like the way these entrance pieces work. I really wish that the game, and hopefully if they do make a Planet Coaster 2, will make it where you don't have to have those in there. Here you see that I actually find some Legos that I felt really worked well. They were amusement park Lego games, or Lego builders, for like a roller coaster and a carousel and a Ferris wheel. And I felt like those fit and would be something that would be sold in a shop like this. So I go ahead and put those on the table instead. They were a little bit fussy to get in place as they're not exactly on right angles like I'd like, But I stack them up there, I think they work, and they just added a little something to that area. Then, as I said, I did feel like there was some area missing, so I add in these candy things that I also got from Geekism. I had seen them on his channel, so I add those in as well. And that pretty much ends what I do in this area. I go ahead and look at some other items to possibly see if I want to use them. Nothing really fits, other than I decide, you know what, I'm going to put on a sign that you could buy from the place. But with that in mind, as I said, if you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and like it, do subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you for the next episode of Planet Coaster.